In October 1983, Tammy Oldham, a 23-year-old sailor, and her fiancé Richard Sharp, 34, set out from Tahiti on what should have been a dream voyage. They'd been hired to deliver a luxury yacht, a 44-foot sailboat, to San Diego, a journey of about 4,000 miles across the Pacific. Tammy and Richard were experienced sailors and deeply in love, planning to marry when they reached California. The weather forecast looked good. They set sail with high spirits, navigating by the stars, sleeping under tropical skies. But 4 days into the journey, they sailed directly into Hurricane Raymond, a Category 4 monster with 140-mile-per-hour winds and waves over 50 feet tall. The storm hit with terrifying speed. Richard scrambled to secure the sails while Tammy went below deck. A massive wave capsized the boat, hurling it sideways. Tammy was thrown across the cabin, smashing her head. She blacked out. When she came to 27 hours later, the storm had passed. The cabin was destroyed, flooded, everything broken. She climbed on deck, calling for Richard. He was gone, swept overboard, lost to the sea. Tammy was alone, 1,500 miles from land, on a crippled boat with no engine, no masts, and no radio. This is the story of her 41-day fight for survival and the hallucination that kept her alive. Tammy's first moments of consciousness were pure horror. Blood covered her face from a head wound. The boat was barely afloat, listing heavily, water sloshing through the cabin. She searched frantically for Richard, screaming his name into the empty ocean. Nothing. The safety harness he'd been wearing was gone, snapped. He'd been torn from the boat during the storm and swallowed by the sea. Tammy collapsed, sobbing, but survival instinct overrode grief. She assessed the damage. The masts were sheared off, the sails shredded, the engine flooded and dead, the radio destroyed. Navigation equipment was ruined, but the hull was intact. The boat wouldn't sink. She had some food, a manual sextant for navigation, and her knowledge of sailing. She made a decision. She would sail to Hawaii, the nearest land, over 1,500 miles northeast. It was impossible, but staying meant certain death. So she began. Using debris and salvaged materials, she rigged a makeshift sail from a storm jib. It was crude, barely functional, but it caught wind. Slowly, agonizingly, the crippled boat began to move. Tammy set a course and started the longest, loneliest voyage of her life. The psychological toll was immediate. Tammy was in shock, grieving Richard, injured, and facing weeks alone at sea. But then something extraordinary happened. She saw Richard. He was there in the cockpit, talking to her, helping her navigate, encouraging her to keep going. She knew, rationally, that he was dead, but the hallucination was so vivid, so comforting, that she accepted it. Psychologists later explained it as a coping mechanism, her mind creating a companion to stave off the crushing isolation and trauma. Richard became her co-pilot. She talked to him, asked his advice, felt his presence. It kept her sane. Meanwhile, her body was failing. The head injury caused dizziness and nausea. She rationed food obsessively, canned goods, peanut butter, a few crackers, eating tiny amounts to make supplies last. Water was critical. She collected rainwater in buckets, drinking sparingly, knowing dehydration would kill her faster than starvation. Days blurred into weeks. The sun scorched her skin. Her lips cracked and bled, her body weakened. But she kept sailing, adjusting the makeshift sail, navigating by sextant and dead reckoning, inching toward Hawaii. Storms hit repeatedly, battering the fragile boat. Tammy bailed water for hours, exhausted, her hands raw and blistered. Sharks circled, their fins cutting the surface, curious about the slow-moving vessel. She lived in constant fear that the hull would breach, that she'd sink and drown. Sleep was brief and fitful. She couldn't risk sleeping long in case the boat drifted off course or another storm hit. She lost track of time, marking days on a calendar, but the monotony of sun, sea, and solitude made everything blend together. She sang to herself, recited memories, clung to the image of Richard sitting beside her, and she sailed. One day at a time, 1 nautical mile at a time. By week 4, food was nearly gone. She was skeletal, weak, barely able to stand, her vision blurred. She began to wonder if she'd miscalculated, if Hawaii was farther than she thought, if she'd die within sight of land. But on day 41, October 22nd, she saw it, a dark line on the horizon, land, the island of Hilo, Hawaii. She wept, overwhelmed, disbelieving. She'd done it. She'd sailed 1,500 miles on a broken boat, alone, and survived. A Coast Guard vessel spotted her limping yacht and towed her into harbor. When rescuers boarded, they were stunned. Tammy was emaciated, dehydrated, sunburned, and traumatized, but alive. The boat was a wreck, held together by willpower and improvised repairs. They asked where her crew was. She told them about Richard, about the storm, about the 41 days alone. The Coast Guard launched a search, but found nothing. Richard Sharp was declared lost at sea. Tammy spent weeks in the hospital recovering physically, but the emotional scars took years. She struggled with PTSD, survivor's guilt, and the loss of the man she loved. She blamed herself. Maybe she could have saved him. Maybe she should have done something different. Therapists helped her understand there was nothing she could have done. The ocean had taken him, and it had spared her. That wasn't her fault. Slowly, she rebuilt her life. She continued sailing. She refused to let fear steal that from her. And decades later, she wrote a book, Red Sky and Morning, telling her story. It was adapted into the film Adrift in 2018, introducing her survival to a new generation. Tammy Oldham's story is one of the most harrowing ocean survival tales ever recorded. 41 days alone at sea, navigating by sextant, on a boat that shouldn't have floated, driven by love and the refusal to surrender. She didn't have the luxury of rescue, no EPIRB, no satellite phone, no way to call for help. She had only herself, her skills, and the hallucination of the man she loved guiding her home. Survival experts marvel at her achievement. The improvised sail, the navigation across 1,500 miles of open ocean with minimal tools, the mental fortitude to keep going when every rational part of her brain screamed to give up. Today, Tammy lives quietly, still connected to the sea, still honoring Richard's memory. She says the ocean gave her two gifts. It taught her she was stronger than she ever imagined, and it let her say goodbye to Richard in her own way, over 41 days of conversation with his ghost. He got me home, she says. Even after he was gone, he got me home. And that's the power of love and survival intertwined.